You're still too far away. I can't operate like this. Come on, I need the children nearer. It doesn't really matter. How can you sit so far? Okay, before I start this, the etiquettes of a majlis. Not me, Imam Sadiq, not me. So he says when you come in, you sit right at the front, and then you move back. You're going the other way around. This is Khoja attitude. Okay. All right, let's start the Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العظيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So today I said that we would talk about the Battle of Badr in a little bit of detail. I know you've done it in madrasa, workshop, wherever you went, but we're going to go over that. And we're going to look at Laylat al-Qadr, and hopefully you have your books with you where you're going to write or you're going to annotate. And I think on the Telegram group you've been sent some papers as well. So we're going to start off with the Battle of Badr. The first lesson from the Battle of Badr is that if Allah is with you, it doesn't matter who is against you. Really doesn't matter. So let's see what happens. So the Prophet finds out that the Makkans have sent a trade caravan to Syria, from Makkah to Syria. Now, when the Muhajir, and I say Muhajir, when the Prophet and his companions left Makkah, the Makkans had confiscated all their goods, everything. So they didn't have anything at all. When they found out that this trade caravan was going to Syria, they also found out that most of the Makkans had shares in it, and it was a really large trade caravan. So the Prophet sends people to find out what's going on, needs intel. And he's told that they were going to use the profits to be able to attack the Muslims. Okay, so you got a trade caravan. This is history, really important to know. So history tells me that this trade caravan is going to attack the Muslims, and the Prophet decides to meet them somewhere so they can take back what is owed to them. So he goes with 313 men, 2 horses, 70 camels, and they go to Badr. Now Badr is like a service station. So if you imagine the motorway, Badr is where everybody stops to have a drink, to wait, to rest. So imagine the service station. 8 days in Dhul Qa'dah, Badr had a really large market. So everybody knew where Badr was, and there was a mountain there. I don't know, those of you who have gone for Umrah, you might have seen where Badr is. If not, may Allah grant you the opportunity to go. So the Prophet gets to Badr. The person leading the caravan is called Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan thinks he's really great, but he's a bit of a chicken. The moment he finds out, because he finds out as well that the Prophet is there, he doesn't want to stay anymore, and he takes the back route. That means he doesn't go. If you look at your sat-nav, Waze will not take you through motorways sometimes. It will take you different ways. So he goes the back route, and he goes back to Makkah. But Abu Jahl is really arrogant and proud. And he says, this is not happening. We're going to finish the Muslims once and for all. So with between 950 to 1,000 soldiers, so the Muslims are outweighed 1 to 3. They have 100 horses or 100 camels, whatever. They have a whole bunch, a good army. And they go to be able to attack the Muslims. Now you just got to imagine, because God has given you and me imagination. So imagine the mountain of Badr, imagine the Quraysh behind the mountain, and imagine the Muslims here. And they're sort of looking at this army, because the Prophet sends people to see what they have. And he says, we're outnumbered 1 to 3. We got nothing compared to them. And they've got a really well-organized army, and we're this band of people here. Now in the midst of this, you can imagine, the midst of thinking what's going on, the Prophet raises his hands in dua. And yesterday we went over that dua. Basically, that dua is saying, I will do my best, but I will trust you to do the rest. You know, every morning in Fajr Salah you read, وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. I hand over my affairs to Allah. He is watchful. And one of the greatest things anyone can do is trust. Tawakkul is really hard. So let's go back to the battle. 17th of Ramadan. Battle only took half a day. First, like Arab custom, there was a one-to-one combat. But the Makkans, so you can imagine they sent their best warriors, and the Prophet sent people from Medina, the Ansar. The Makkans said, that's not happening. We're not going to fight them. We want our equals from Makkah. So their equals were sent. They were defeated. Every time somebody came, it didn't work. The Makkans were defeated. They got so fed up, they started attacking en masse. That means just willy-nilly, just went straight on. Right? In any case, the Prophet is sitting there praying like you know the dua. And Allah answers this dua. Now, if you look at Surah number 8, Ayah 9, I think we talked about it yesterday, when Allah says, we will help you with 1,000 angels. So you imagine the Makkans looking at the Muslims and seeing these rows of angels. They are petrified, absolutely petrified. In the end, the Muslims win. This is the first battle. It puts them on the map. And with everybody who had really looked down upon them, they are now a force to reckon with. Now, each one of us, every single one of us, goes through battles in our lives. All of us. And I mentioned this yesterday, and I'll repeat it again. Nobody's going to understand your battle. Nobody. You can try as hard as you want. Most people will say, well, get on with it. People go through worse than you do. That's the normal answer that people see. But inside yourself, it's a battle that you think is no-win situation. That's the dua to read, the one we talked about yesterday of the Prophet. And he will help. You know, there's an ayah in Quran. All of you should know it. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 186. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ إِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي Kareeb. And when my abd asks you about me, I am very near. Ujibu da'wat ad-da'i idha da'an. I answer the call of the caller when he calls me. And then he says, فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. What I want from you, Allah says, is I want you to answer me, and I want you to believe in me, to trust in me. Now, that's quite hard, because you think, sometimes I can't answer the adhan at the same time. How do I trust in him? Well, Imam Sadiq made it very simple. And he was asked, Ya ibn Rasulullah, how did I make sure that my dua is answered? And he says, this last bit, فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي, is entirely up to you being absolutely sure that your dua will be answered. I'll give you an example. Okay, say you've got the tabarruk behind there, right? You've got crisps and chocolates and drink or whatever there is, right? When we first started early classes, I used to have to do those myself. But now, I just have to see Muhaymina there, and you know they're going to get done. You don't even have to see the box. You don't have to even to see the bag. You just have to see her. And you know it's going to get done. I'm sorry to embarrass her, but it's going to get done. It just gets done. If you see her, you know this place will be tidy. That's a bit of a dig at you, because sometimes you leave this place really messy. You're supposed to clean the square meter around you, because people use it in the evening, but people like her will come and clean it after you. Okay, that was a little bit of a dig. Anyway, so the idea was trust. You have total trust. In that way, when you ask Allah, no, the answer is at the door. The timing may be slightly different because He knows better. And I mentioned this before when we talked about dua, that if your child came and said they wanted your best knife, you wouldn't give it to them now. But when they're 12 or 13, you'll say, please cut the salad. And that's when they'll say no. Okay? But when they're 4, they will want it. So the idea here, the whole question of Badr, is to be able to trust in Him. And I mean, don't stop. You know, I talked about this yesterday at Qadr, and we're going to go there in a minute. Don't limit yourself. Why are you limiting yourself? He is limitless. You've got to have aspirations that are way above. You know, when I look at the children in workshop, the little ones that come, you know that amongst them will be somebody who will be a global leader. You know amongst them, and you know what? This community, which has heard majalis year in, year out, day in, day out, we all go to madrasa, we all go to workshop, wherever we go, all the places we go, we haven't produced one mujtahid. Why? Because our aspirations, no, we want, why can't you do it? Wouldn't it be awesome to have an Ayatollah Stanmore? You know their names according to names, don't you? Like Khui comes from Khui. Khomeini comes from Khomeini. You know that, don't you? Oh, you didn't? Oh, now you know, okay? Wouldn't it be awesome? And that's what you should aspire towards. Anything. I'm picking on something like being a marja, but anything at all. These are the aspirations. If you don't want them in yourself, don't know why you don't want them in yourself, but your children, for God's sakes, make sure they reach the stars. Don't stop. Don't stop praying for that. Don't limit yourself. Look at Badr. He will help, provided I believe that he will help. So that's a lesson from Badr today, and inshallah you will do that. Maybe Surah Talaq, Surah number 65, ayah 2 and 3. Maybe you lot read it. So if you read this particular verse 3 times, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يحتسب وما يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه إن الله بالغ أمره جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا. This verse with Ayatul Kursi, the tasbih of Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra, 3 times Ikhlas and Salawat. By the way, go to the website. It's called Better Than Alchemy. It can change dust to gold. All it's about is وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever trusts in Allah, He will show them a way out. وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. If you trust in Allah, He's enough. إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ. He will get you to reach where you want. It's an amazing ayah. And this is what Badr is about. That's what Badr teaches you and me. So hopefully you will get that there. But now back to our Laylatul Qadr. So if you've got your books with you, so I have my book from years ago. It's got a bit of a cover on it. On your Telegram group, you were sent these, okay? I should have printed them out in color, but that's in black and white. You've got something that says 14 Masumeen. You were also sent a piece of paper or a document which said what to do on Laylatul Qadr. This is what you're going to do tomorrow. This is what you and I are going to do tomorrow. So I'm going to go through this one by one. Okay? Really important. I mentioned yesterday, 19, 21, 23. Really, really important. 19 is when we will begin to set our budget. So by tomorrow, you must have your aspirations. Now, yesterday I talked about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. But one of the things we need to do tomorrow night is take time out. And if you've got kids, it's quite difficult. But I'm sure when they're asleep, you've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes, lock yourself in the toilet. Okay, it's probably the best place to be, bathroom, whatever you want to call it. Lock yourself up. For 10 minutes, think, who am I? Where am I going? What will my legacy be? Legacy is really important. And what is my mission statement in life? It's quite difficult. Firms pay a large amount of money for people to come in and work out a mission statement that in one line would tell you who you are. Nobody can tell you who you want to be, but you need to be able to do that. Think about it. Do you know your great-great-grandmother? Okay, your great-great-great-grandmother. Why not? Do you know your great-great-grandmother? Besides the fact that if it wasn't for her, you wouldn't be here. So there's a legacy purpose there. In the same way, a few generations down, they won't know who you and I are unless we have served humanity. Unless we have made a difference to change this world for a better place for someone else. And it's something you and I need to think about. How do I change myself inside to get closer to divinity, to reach my personal best? That's Laylatul Qadr. Everything else will happen. Not that it won't. Okay. It's known as Qalb Shahru Ramadan, the heart of Ramadan, Sayyidul Layali, the best of nights, and Ra'asus Sana. It's known as the head of the year, which is the beginning of the spiritual year. So let's go through what you have to do. The first thing I've put here is aspirations. Just write down your aspirations and write them down. Don't just think them. Writing down when you see something, you say, oh my goodness, this is what I aspire. And it doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter. Write down what you really aspire for. I'm just going to draw your attention to something. I got married, 46 years ago, 47 years ago. Yeah, don't look at me like that, okay? So I was 16. So 47 years ago. And I think I may have been worried about what I wore or whether the sari was good or not. I don't remember. But at that time, it was the most important thing in my life. Did it match? Did it not? Did it this? Did it that? But it didn't matter. Because you know what? At this age, I realized nobody really cares. They only worry about themselves. They really don't care. So don't write stuff that is not relevant, really. Okay? Think about stuff that will take you to somewhere higher. And these are just some. I mean, if you write down in your aspirations that tomorrow you want your scarf to match your dress, it's okay. Because Prophet Musa was told, Musa asked me for the shoelaces in your shoes and your salt in your dough. But that's not really going to take you very far. So these aspirations of Laylat al-Qadr are going to be really intense. Cut them down to those that are really, really important. Okay. The next thing you will do is sadaqah. Please give sadaqah today, before Laylatul Qadr tomorrow, so it gets to its place. Refers to the Tawbah, ayah 104. Allah accepts sadaqah. Imam Sajjad says, before you give sadaqah to a person, it goes into the hands of Allah. The beautiful story that we tell children about Imam Sajjad and his companions. And this person comes, and he doesn't have anything. And Imam gives him everything he has. And then Imam kisses his hand and says, you are my Muhsin. You have done ihsan on me. When he goes away, the companion says, but Ya Ibn Rasulullah, you did ihsan on him. You're the one who gave him everything you had. He said, no. He said, who is there who will take my money, multiplied amazing times, and deposited my bank account with Allah without charging me anything? Who will do that? Now for me, the difficult part is, I don't know whether you do this, but I'm talking about me. I remember helping out, sorting out clothes, and I still do that. And when I see some of the stuff that is brought in, it's not washed, it's not folded, it's not ironed, it's just dumped into a black bag and left up here. Okay, don't look at me and don't shake your heads, huh? But if I were to know that this is going to people who probably have no clothes. I have a friend of mine, she's Jewish, but she looks after the Shias in the camps. She told me one day, she called me, this is only a couple of years ago, and we still send stuff now, but she called me a couple of years ago and she said, they have a tent there in Lesvos where there are 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Between the 3 brothers, they have 1 shirt, and between the 2 sisters, they have 1 hijab. So if somebody wants to go out, you have to borrow one. So she wanted to collect hijabs, and everybody here was ultra generous. But when we sorted out the bags, I felt ashamed. In fact, when I opened the first one, I told her, I'll do this myself, go. Because there's no way I could present to somebody outside that my community would put stuff like that. So you know what? When you give sadaqah, I mean, give not those pennies that are left over, not those clothes that you want to give away. When I was a child, my father taught me that what you gave was the best of what you wore, not the worst of what you wore. And even if you do give that which is your children have grown out or you have grown out, iron, fold, put them nice as you would like to receive them. Okay, so that's sadaqah. It's not just putting a few pennies in the blue box or the red box. That does not work. Okay, just send it out as much as possible. Maybe I'll tell you, if we have time, I'll tell you how sadaqah helped, or how your donations over the years have helped people. I've got a couple of minutes and I'll tell you. So we had a village where children had to go to school. So imagine village, school. In between there's a massive farm. The children had to wake up an hour earlier to go to school because walking around the farm took them an hour. Okay, I won't tell you where this is. So they walked around. With your help as young mothers, this is going back over 10 years, but throughout those years, but this thing was done a few years ago. We bought a strip of land, and we probably paid that guy for that strip of land more than his whole farm was worth. That meant that the children didn't have to get up an hour earlier. That means they could actually cut down 45 minutes of their time. And on that strip of land, they planted food so their parents had food as well. In the end, we also put 2 wells in so these kids could have, like the parents could have food and water and not wake up an hour earlier. That's what your sadaqah has to do. You've got to find projects, or you've got to give where it makes a difference to somebody's life. You go ask any one of those children, any one of them, what you did, and you might have thought that you were giving us money in envelopes and boxes or whatever, but it made such a difference. That's what your sadaqah should do. Find people, and don't tell me you can't find anybody here. There are so many people who are finding it so hard to pay their electricity bills. There's so many people who are finding it hard today because energy has gone up. You all know that, right? So much has changed. In our own country, in our own towns, we have people who are struggling. Okay. The third thing is ghusl. You got to do ghusl. Teach your children to do ghusl. The ghusl of Laylatul Qadr is phenomenal. Recommended, one beginning of the night and one end of the night. But okay, one beginning of the night is good. Okay? And then 2, 2, 2, 2. Inna Allaha yuhibbut tawabin wa yuhibbul mutatahhirin. So you're going to do ghusl, then you're going to pray your Salatul Maghrib and Isha. Okay, you might have iftar first, really doesn't matter. I'm hoping that at iftar you know that the heavens open and you pause and you say, Ya wasi al-maghfira, ighfirli, forgive me, and you ask for your hajat then. And then you have the Salah of Laylatul Qadr. And we make sure your children, tomorrow, we will talk about it to them, that they will do those 2 rakats, which has Fatiha and 7 times Ikhlas. And then when they finish 70 times, Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Do you know what? That's Salah. When your children finish that Salah, their parents are forgiven. When you recite that Salah, your parents are forgiven. It's phenomenal. Can you just imagine? Your children are Masoom. There is no way their du'as are not accepted. And it doesn't matter if they did a Salah quickly and they only did 1 Ikhlas. But the very fact that their intention was that I'm reciting this Salah so my parents will be forgiven. Just imagine, you have been forgiven. Where do you get such a ni'mah? And when you do it, your children will do it. And my God, it will continue for generations. And it's just phenomenal. So even if you can't do anything on Laylatul Qadr, 2 rakats. And your parents deserve that. And you deserve it from your children too. You know, Jannah lies at the feet of mothers. You've heard that, don't you? Well, why did God put that Jannah at the feet? Why wouldn't He give Jannah to the hands? Why not? He didn't put it in their hands because the mom is absolutely selfless and she would just give it away. He put Jannah at her feet, so when you carried a bit of her weight, you would get that Jannah. And your parents deserve that. It doesn't matter who they are, what they are. For Laylatul Qadr, I would call them, I would tell them I love you so much. I'm really sorry for being such a pain in the neck all these years. And believe me, you were. Okay, if you think you weren't, you were. Just have to look at your kids. All right? So I'm really sorry I was such a pain in the neck, and please forgive me. And I will do this salah, especially for the fact that you will be forgiven. And in every kunut, I will say, Rabbi irhamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. These are things you need to do. This is what Laylatul Qadr is about. So, your salah of Laylatul Qadr. And then there's istighfar. Istighfar is acknowledging sins. We've done a whole, you can listen to it again. We talked about istighfar. Ghifar was the helmet that covered your head. In essence, istighfar is covering yourself from the consequences of your own sins. So even just sitting down and saying, Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh, and thinking remorse, forgiving one, asking for forgiveness for oneself. If you have hurt someone, just write a en masse WhatsApp and say, I'm really sorry. I may have done some stupid things. I may have said things. Please forgive me. Okay. I remember in Moshi, I grew up in this small town called Moshi. It was the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro. And as a child, I remember this man. Every Laylatul Qadr would stand outside and give everybody these papers. And this paper would, and you know, at that time you didn't have photocopiers, or you had to cyclist style each paper. And he'd done that and cut them, and he would say, please forgive me. And we'd look at it and say, yeah, put it away. And he died the next year. But you know what? He had asked for forgiveness from every member of the community. And that is something phenomenal. We used to laugh about it. But now when you think about it, there is so much wisdom in it. Then you have la'na. You know la'na, right? Allahumma lan katala ta'mir al-mu'minin. La'na is a dua to withdraw mercy. When you say la'na, it's actually a dua which says, Ya Allah, withdraw your mercy, withdraw your guidance from this person, because this person does not seem to understand. Abdul Rahman ibn Muljim knew exactly what he was doing. When you send la'na to someone, you're telling yourself, I never want to be in a position where somebody will do la'na on me. And that means I will never do injustice. So these are things to think about when we do this tasbih. And then you have this amal. You put your Quran on your head, and then you say the name of the Masumeen. So here I hope you'll be writing, or you're looking at your piece of paper that you've got there. So I'm going to go through very briefly as to what I think when I think of each of the Masumeen. Okay, I'm going to put this paper away. So the moment I think of the Prophet, and these are attributes that I wish to imbibe in myself. I definitely think of his age when I think 40, 53, 63, but I won't go into that with you right now. All I want you to think is when you think of the Prophet tomorrow, you think TTC. He was truthful, he was trustworthy, and he was extremely compassionate. So that's the three things I have to, in Laylat al-Qadr, think. Can I do that? Can I be truthful? Can I be trustworthy? And can I be compassionate? Now the compassionate plays a big part. Often we are truthful without compassion, but you require that compassion in everything. Then we have Sayyidah Fatima. And then I think, and you think of her as Abiha. She's known as the mother of her father. Do I look after my parents like that? She was, Imam Ali said she was the best of wives, best of moms, best of community, if I can say community participant members. She taught the women of Medina. She was phenomenal. More than that, she stood up for truth. Now, in her community, she couldn't stand up and talk. She couldn't say that this is unjust. She did go to the mosque of Medina, and she did tell the Khalifa what he was doing was wrong. But that was about it. She couldn't do much more because it was a chauvinistic society. So her way of protesting against injustice was she withdrew from the community. And you all hear about Baytul Huzn, you know, the house where she cried. She cried, she actually withdrew. So obviously people would ask, why is she crying? Why did she withdraw? She withdrew because of the injustice that was done. So you think about somebody who stood for justice, somebody who looked after her dad phenomenally. And the best of wives, best of mothers, best of community members. Then you look at Imam Ali, oh my goodness. The perfect student of Rasulullah. It's like he mirrored everything Rasulullah said. He would never say anything without saying, I heard this from Rasulullah. So Imam Ali, I mean, let me go back a bit. I'm sure, and I hope, that all of you have a copy of Nahj al-Balagha. I remember as a child, my father died when I was 10. But I remember going through his books because nobody wanted them when I was a bit older. And there were 3 books that my father kept near his bedside and that my father read all the time. One was the Quran, one was Mafatihul Jinan, and the third one was Nahj al-Balagha. I remember the Nahj al-Balagha that I picked up. It had a brown cover, and one of the pages was folded. There was a triangular fold, and it had my name on it. I was the eldest. My younger sister was 2 when he died. So when I picked up that book and I looked at that fold and with my name on it, it said letter number 31. And I was enamored because my father was obviously directing me to something that I never thought about. I went and bought a copy of Nahj al-Balagha because the one that he had was in Arabic and it was translated into Gujarati. But the one I bought was translated into English and it's phenomenal. So when you look at Imam Ali, think Nahj al-Balagha, think, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to try and follow what it says. Imam Hassan, my goodness, we talked about him, the Hudna, the ceasefire, but the foundation for Imam Hussein's revolution. And then Imam Hussein, Kullu yawmin ashura, kullu ardhin Karbala. He stood for freedom. That's basically what he stood for. When I think of Imam Hussein, there's one thing I think of. Amidst my chaos, there is you. That means there is divinity. So amidst all that chaos, he saw Allah and he taught you and me how to be free. Then you have Imam Sajjad. The moment you think of Imam Sajjad, Saifatu Sajjadiyah, and Majalis, you and I would never have this farsh had it not been for Sayyidah Zainab and Imam Sajjad. And to be able to think through when you're going, Ali ibn Muhammad, you're going Fatima, Ya Ali, whatever names you're talking about, the Masumeen, you got to think these things should go through your mind. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, what did he do? Well, he made learning easy for you and me. Things that were difficult, he's known as one who split open knowledge. Basically, he made things easier. It's so hard if you were to read the translation of Quran and you think, thee, thou, this, that, what's it talking about? What? It was Muhammad Baqir who made things easy. Imam Jafar Sadiq, my goodness, universities. He opened a university in Masjid al-Nabi, 4,000 students, whether it was chemistry or whether it was geography or whether it was ilmul kalam or whether it was anything, all the things that we talk about. Go to the Science Museum. Look at the properties of mercury as narrated by Jabir ibn Hayyan, who is known as Geber, because they don't want to call him Jabir, they call him Gabar. His name is Jabir. He was a companion of Imam Sadiq. And if you look at the properties of mercury, it's written, go to the Science Museum, take your children. I have learned this from my master, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. These are the properties of mercury. So when I look at Imam Sadiq, I think, oh my goodness. Imam Qadim, Musa al-Qadim, resembled Prophet Musa totally. But he had phenomenal sabr. So when you look at Surah Al-Kahf and you look at the story of Musa and Khizr, Musa does not have sabr there. But here, Imam Musa al-Qadim, my goodness, his sabr was amazing. Imam Ali Rida, come on, all of us know. He converted a whole country into a country of knowledge. Because that country wasn't the country that it was before Imam Ali Rida went there. Today, Iran is known for its knowledge because of this one man who's known as Gharib al-Ghuraba. Gharib means a stranger, not Gharib as in Kutchi or Gujarati as poor, means a stranger. So Gharib al-Ghuraba, the stranger converted a whole country to knowledge. And then we come to Imam Muhammad Taqi. Everybody knows here's a Jawad. They wear these rings. Sometimes they're fake, by the way. Okay, make sure you got the right ones. The right here's a Jawad is written on deer skin. You can't fit it into a ring. Anyway, that's another story altogether. But the moment you think Imam Muhammad Taqi, you think of the protection, but you think of preparation for ghaibah. He actually initiated this network of organizations. We have one today. We have something called COED, and we have the WF, and we have all these networks which this Imam initiated, so that when there is a ghaibah of Imam Zaman, Ajjalallahu Faraja, we'd all be prepared. Imam Ali al-Naqi continued this preparation. If you look at Imam Muhammad Taqi, he only lived for 25 years. He was poisoned. Then you have Imam Ali al-Naqi, just 42 years, but longest period of Imamat, and imprisoned, taken out of prison, but he continued to encourage these networks. And then Imam Hassan al-Askari, my goodness, what a phenomenal personality. 28 years old, imprisoned for most of his life, but even in prison, wrote something called Tafsir Askari. You know, the Tafsir of Quran, there's one called Tafsir Askari. There's quite a few books, but at least when I look at Imam Askari, I think, my goodness, he did, any situation he was in, he made sure he made that situation viable. And finally, Imam Muhammad al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu Faraja, my goodness, your Imam and my Imam. One who dies without the knowledge of his Imam dies the death of ignorance. So, all I would encourage you to do is find out, Ghaibat al-Sugra, who are these people? Why do you write an Ariza and you address it to Hussein ibn Rawh? Why? Who was he? Okay, an Ariza is just a matter of putting things into perspective. You think about it. And I've spoken about this example many times, but repetition is good. Quran says, in naf'ati dhikra. We had a 5-year-old at a workshop who came up to us and said, I want an Ariza. So we said, okay. And 5-year-olds cannot write, they have to write big. And this Ariza is tiny, right? So, can we help? What's the matter? Said, my Baba is not well. So we all wrote an Ariza. And then we took her, I'm not allowed to tell you, but in the car park, there's a well. And the well has a tiny slot where you can put your Ariza in. It's the freshest water in Stanmore. You know that? Oh, you didn't? Okay. So that's your post box. So we posted it for her. And she posted it. A couple of weeks later, she came back and she said, want another Ariza. Our hearts were up here. Because you think, what's the matter? She said, Baba's well. He's fine. I now have to say thank you to Imam. That is what it's about. So when you have your, you're putting your Quran on your head, you've got your names here. When you come to Imam Zaman, Ajjalallahu Faraja, and you will stand up for it, it's not just a tradition. It's not something that, yeah, okay, everybody does it, I'm going to, la, 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 la. Put an Ariza in your book, write it, and I promise you the answer will be there, and then I'm hoping 2 days later you will start writing thank you as well. Just like this little girl. She taught us so much. So much. So it's quite important we keep all these things in our mind, okay? And there's a hadith of Imam Sadiq which says, the best of you are those who wait for the Mahdi. So how do I wait for him? What do I do? How do I prepare for this? How do I become somebody that he will want and say, oh my goodness, I definitely want you to be with me? How? And these are questions we will answer, inshallah, over the next few days. But for now, I've got a minute. I'd just like to end in a couple of things. So a few du'as tomorrow. Accept my fasting and my salah. Forgive my shortcomings. Forgive my sins. Make me amongst the 54-55. We've already done that, right? So you know what 54-55 is. Give me good health. Give good health to my family, my friends, my community, and keep them under the shade of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. Because we're a family, and that's what it's all about. So really important to keep some of these du'as, besides the ones that you've written down in your minds. So let's end with the Surah Al-Fatiha and the dua for protection. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العظيم.